This video will address how to proceed through Unit 1. When you access the course, as you can see, there's some tools available to you on the left. When you go through to unit content, you will find the content that is available for each unit. For Unit 1, you can see the date range that is available for that unit. Now, you can access the unit content at any time, but there is a set date range in which you will need to make sure your schedule allows for that unit to be addressed. So when you click on the unit, there are the 4 sections that you can access to get a good idea of what to expect for that time period. Now, what I want to recommend before going into these 4 is that you go back to the syllabus and schedule and take a look at the schedule by date. That should give you a rundown of what to expect for each unit and the due dates for those. Due dates for everything are always on Sundays at 11:59 p.m. Now, based on which time of the year you are in this course, you'll see different dates. For example, this one is specific to the semester break course, but every semester break course is different. So make sure that you are looking clearly at the dates for each thing. So for example, during week 1, which in this case would be November 27th through December 3rd, you would want to follow these procedures. So watch Unit 1 lectures and take notes as you watch and listen, and then begin reading the book Mindset. Each week will be laid out like that. So when you're ready, you could either print this out, that or the course schedule by content, whichever you're more comfortable with. I think this one's the most useful to you. But when you're ready, I would either print it out or have a screenshot of it so that you can access it each week. But also on the home page, there is a to-do section that should be able to give you everything you need to know in terms of what is due when. Now, in some cases, this has gone a little haywire and it hasn't been perfect, but in most cases it works okay. So hopefully it will work all right for you. Now let's go to the unit content and we'll talk about Unit 1 here. This unit is going to address the idea of communication process and mindset. So you'll want to start with the Unit 1 lectures because as you recall, the first week is going to ask you to look at the lectures and the reading and get started. Now, the reading is something that, although I'm asking you to read many chapters within a book, it's a pretty fast read, so you should be okay to get it done quickly. You can also use an audio version of the book and listen to it as you're driving and such. But Unit 1 lectures is laid out here. I have a video that will tell you what topics we're going through, and then you can go in and again, as I mentioned in the orientation, you can either click on the playlist and watch them back to back for each of the parts, or you can go and individually watch each video. So each of the parts of Unit 1, Part 1 being communication process and Part 2 being mindset, are all available in those folders. So take some time to watch those. Set aside a good amount of time to watch them and take notes and be ready to submit those notes. The PowerPoint is also here. I do give a lot more in-depth information in the videos. The PowerPoint is just kind of an outline. It's there to keep me and you on track, but if you would like, you can download this PowerPoint and use what you downloaded to write notes, and that makes it, for some, that makes it easier. For others, they just prefer to do the traditional note-taking on a notebook page or on a Word document. And then here are your mindset required readings. So you need to pick which readings you want to do from 4 to 7 and make sure to get all that reading done within the next time period. For this one, I would get them done within the next 2 weeks at the most. Okay, so Unit 1 lectures and readings are available here. The film information, as I mentioned in lecture, is available here. So hopefully you have either purchased one of these films or you have planned or found it in some other format, whether that's the library or some access through a rental like Amazon Prime or Amazon in general or Netflix if it's available and such. So that's the film information. For this week, I want to spend a little bit of time on the assignments. That way you can kind of know for Unit 1 what to expect. The Unit 1 activities are also available to you as you listen to lectures, so take a moment to check those out if you're interested. But let's spend some time talking about each of these assignments. Okay, so for the Unit 1 notes, Going back to the schedule, you'll notice that the notes are due for the semester break class at the end of week 2. That means notes will be due on this date here. Now, for this semester break class, that's the 10th of December, but if in the future it may be a different semester break class, and that might be a slightly different date. But in general, for everyone, it is due at the end of week 2. So you need to make sure you have read Mindset, you have watched all of the lectures and taken notes, and then these are the 2 things you will participate in by the end of week 2. So let's go back to the Unit 1 assignments, and we can kind of see what to expect for those. So as you're watching on the first group, the lecture material for the part 1 and the lecture material for part 2, make sure to write thorough notes for every single lecture. You want to include the material that I mentioned in lecture along with your own kind of thoughts and application on the topics. And then make sure that any material that you put within your own thoughts or application is done in some other color or highlighted. Now, what do I mean when I say thoughts and application? I mean, if we're talking about, say, noise in the transactional communication model, you may say that there's a variety of types of noise, including physical, or physiological, external, and such. But I also want you to put in your notes how you would apply that. For example, you might be talking about psychological noise, and you might put a star next to that in another color or highlighted. Man, I experienced this in my biology class because there's so much information that I get overwhelmed and it stresses me out, and I feel like that's kind of noise. Or you might put an example. External noise would be something like when my phone rings in the middle of a conversation or something like that. So you're giving yourself examples or what thoughts you had as you were listening to lecture, and make sure to put those into a different color. Now, some folks will do that individually for various components of the lecture, while others will put maybe a small paragraph at the end of their notes that applies the information to their experiences, and that would be either highlighted or in a different color. Now, again, you can either type these notes up in Word or Google Docs or something like that, and then submit them that way, or you can handwrite them and just take photos of those and submit. I know personally I do well when I handwrite notes because it helps me to retain the information. It's sort of a kinesthetic process of learning, but it's up to you. If you do handwrite them, just use a smartphone or a tablet of some sort, or if you've got access to a scanner, use the scanner and submit them that way. Okay, now if you click on Unit 1 notes, you will see a rubric for the notes. So I would recommend you take a look at that rubric, and it will tell you kind of what you need to have in order to be successful. So detailed notes for all communication process videos. Each note section must be labeled. So you'll put transaction communication model, and then your notes and your personal application. Then you'll put principles of communication and then your notes. Detailed notes for all Mindset videos follow that same process for all the videos within Mindset. And then in addition to that, notes include content from lecture as well as individual thoughts and application. That's the other colored notes I mentioned. Personal thoughts and application must be in another color or highlighted in some way. And if you'll notice, this is incomplete, complete. So you either get 0 points or 8 points for these 2 sections, and 0 points or 4 points for the final section of using your own application. And it tells you kind of what the percentage is there. So this gives you a nice overview. You could do it as a grid view, or you can kind of look and see what the setup here list-wise is. So that is the rubric, and every assignment typically has a rubric, so I would recommend that you take a look at those pretty regularly. One last thing, when you are submitting the notes, all you have to do is click Browse My Computer, and then go and find your content, whatever you're trying to upload, and then open it there, and you can submit your notes to the Dropbox. This is the Dropbox or the assignment submission page. And then you would click Submit, and you'd be ready to go. In addition to the notes for the end of week 2, you also have Unit 1 discussion. So for that one, you can look at the question here. What information from Unit 1 did you find interesting? How have you seen some of the content from Unit 1 in your own personal or professional experiences? So this basically is a combination of some of the material that you wrote during your note taking. So kind of choose what you found the most interesting, either in mindset or within the lecture notes, and decide how you could apply that information to your own professional or personal experiences, and then just write a post for that. So remember that you need to have substantial information here. Give your perspective. You want to cite anything that you use in terms of definitions or explanations from either lecture, and if you do it from lecture, it's Ruppert-Leach, 2017. If you do it from the book Mindset, it would be Dweck, 2006. So whichever one you're using, you need to use it at least once in the initial post for you to be able to get full credit on that. And that unit discussion is just done here. You click on how to create a thread if you need help there. Otherwise, you just create the thread. And it is, again, a complete, incomplete sort of thing. So for this one, you get points, 5 points for doing an appropriate and substantial discussion post, initial post, and then you'll also get 5 points for each of your response posts. So remember, your response posts are going to need to be at least 2 of those at some point. So I would do your initial post as early as you can so that you can go in and have enough access to response posts as needed. You will also need to complete the exam. Now going back to the syllabus and schedule, you'll notice that week 3, the end of week 3, so it'd be this date here, is where you need to submit both the exam and the project. Now, keep in mind, the project is not a small project. It will take you time. So I highly recommend you get started on this ASAP. You may even choose to, right after you watch the lectures and read Mindset, you may choose to immediately watch your film and have a notepad out so you can kind of see where the concepts stick out to you. Or print off the rubric and use that to kind of get yourself in an organized manner for Unit 1's project. It will take you time, so please do not wait until the final week, Friday before that Sunday, to get it all together, because you will regret that. You don't want to wait that long. And again, you have 2 assignments that are due at the end of week 3, both completing the exam for Unit 1 and completing the project for Unit 1. So let's look at those 2 things and make sure you have what you need for those. So in the exam, I would just recommend that you include all of your notes in front of you while you're ready to take the exam. It has mostly true, false, and multiple choice. And then there's, I think in this first one, I made it a couple of weeks ago, so I'm drawing a blank. But this first one, I believe, is a single short answer. But it could be more than one. It's either going to be 1 or 2 short answers / essays, or it'll be one of those, and then you have to add more depth to that. But it's usually 20% of short answers and essays, and then the rest, 80%, is due to multiple choice and true, false. So that's Unit 1 exam. That's going to be due at the end of week 3. So look at the dates again. And then Unit 1 project is laid out here in instructions. So let's talk a little bit about this project and what you need to do. There are basically 2 parts to the project, and you can choose kind of whatever you want to do in terms of methodology of submitting the project. We have a couple of options that I've laid out for you, but if you've got a better idea or something else that you're interested in, just shoot me an email and let me know what you're thinking, and we'll see if we can make that work. But basically, Unit Project has part 1, which you can either do a regular paper, or you can create a video PowerPoint, which is what I do for all my lectures. So as you saw, I just had myself talking over a PowerPoint. You can do that too, and I've provided instructions as to how to do that if needed. The storyboard with an overview is another one, and that one is a little bit more involved in terms of creativity, but it can be a little bit more fun for folks that are more on the graphic side and like to create. And I have given you what a storyboard is, and then a link to a free digital storyboard creation tool. And you can save it as a PDF or a PowerPoint. There is a watermark on it since it's free, but that's completely fine. I'm not worried about that at all. So if you want to do a storyboard, great. If you want to do a narrated PowerPoint, fantastic. But if you want to just follow the traditional paper format, maybe that's just what you're used to, then by all means do so. You're basically going to choose one or more scenes from your film, and you're going to apply those to the 4 topics discussed. So you're going to want to describe and define the concept. So for this one, you're going to talk about transactional communication model. You're going to describe what it is and how it's comprised and all of its components. And then you're going to explain why it's important. So what was the value of knowing what the transactional model is? And then explain how the concept is expressed in a scene from your film and what recommendations, if any, you would give that character. So for example, in the transactional communication model, maybe you just share what parts of the communication model exist within the film. So pick a communication instance within your film and say, well, these 2 are the communicators. This is the noise that exists in this scene, this, and it's psychological or external or what have you. And just go through all the pieces of the communication model, this transactional one, for that particular scene. Now, for the principles, myths, and competence, you might say, all right, well, I'm going to pick principle number 5 for my application, that communication is both content and relational. And I would go through and kind of explain what that means, why it's important to know that communication is both content and relational. And then I would apply it to a scene. I can say, in this instance, in this example from my film, the communication was both content and relational because this happened and this is what it all means and such. Now you can do that again in a narrated PowerPoint, or you can create a storyboard that kind of expresses what has happened, and then you can give me, a paragraph for each one that says here's what occurred, and use your defining attributes for it. Okay. That's part 1. Part 1 asks you to do that kind of application for these 4 things. Now, part 2 asks you to look at the mindset material. Now, for this one, again, you can choose a formal paper, or you can do an illustration, either digital or hand-drawn illustration of how to change ineffective communication to effective communication. So for this one, you need to pick 1 for the topic in mindset, since it's basically a big topic, 2 of the subtopics from self-concept, and 2 from the subtopics of perception. Now, the drawings would need to be created by you, either digitally or hand-drawn. Or you could do a presentation, or you can do a narrated PowerPoint, or again, if you have another idea, just ask. So for this one, you're going to choose an interpersonal relationship from your film, and you are going to choose an issue that they're experiencing, some kind of conflict or opposing beliefs or something like that. And then formulate a recommendation for this relationship in regards to that issue. So in this case, you might choose a scene or a couple from your film and talk about how there's growth and fixed mindset. So-and-so has growth mindset, so-and-so has fixed mindset, or the relationship is very growth-minded, the relationship is very fixed-minded. And what recommendations do you have for that relationship based on what you know about growth and fixed mindset? And then the same kind of idea for self-concept, but you're going to choose 2 of these. So for example, you might choose self-esteem. You'll talk about what self-esteem is and how it can impact a relationship, and then what you saw within the film that represented negative self-esteem and what they could do to improve it. And that can be for any of these. You just need to choose 2 of them. The same idea for perception. So you might say, I want to talk about the fundamental attribution error or self-serving bias. What is it? Describe the nature of the self-serving bias. What is that? Why do I benefit from knowing about it? And then go into how it applies to the film and what recommendations you have for the person that is experiencing these issues, if any. Or if they're not experiencing it as a negative issue and it's just a representation, for example, the perception process, maybe you see that as just how they've gone through a process of perceiving something. In that case, you wouldn't necessarily need to recommend anything. You would just need to describe clearly. Okay? So you've got that to be part 2. Again, you can either just write it up in a traditional paper format, or you can do illustrations with paragraphs that explain what you're doing with those illustrations and how they apply. Or again, you can do a screen capture or recorded PowerPoint. if you want, or if you'd like, you can even just kind of talk to me about it in a presentation format. So a video recording of you kind of explaining how the whole thing works. And you could do that by recording using your phone or a webcam on your laptop or whatever you're comfortable with. And again, if you have any other ideas, just ask. But again, there are two parts to this, and I want to show you within that project, there is a rubric for it. So you want to view the rubric, and it's very detailed. It says exactly what you need to have for each one. For part one, you need to have 1, 2, 3, 4 components. And in order to get 100%, you have to exceed my expectations. I should see that you put a ton of effort into it and you explained it very clearly. Then you can get a 10 out of 10, 10 out of 12 if you just barely meet my expectations, 8 out of 12 if it's below my expectations, 6 out of 12 if it does not meet it, and then if it's missing altogether, you get a 0 out of 12. And each component is kind of laid out like that, all the way up to grammar and structure, that you kind of have all the pieces together. And so each one gets a click on one of these things, and you'll get a total score from that. So I would highly recommend either printing that out or taking a screen capture so that you can have that information available to you. And you would just do the same thing here as you did with the notes. Browse your computer, pick what you want, and then click open and submit. And that one, again, is due at the end of week 3. So please make sure that you have everything you need for that so that you're ready to go. And you should be good. That's Unit 1. That gives you everything you need. Hopefully you're ready when you have watched this video. I expect that hopefully it will give you everything you need to know. But again, if you have questions, just let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks so much, guys.